Hello, hello. Welcome to the Getcha Some Productions podcast, episode 91. We are a podcast covering everything from related to music production, from the first note to the last fan, and everything in between. So we talk about songwriting, musicianship, fans that are annoying, fans that we love, what to wear on stage. We don't care. It's all fair game here. And usually we have a podcast where Dan and I actually have a business meeting in full view, full public view. So we actually sort of figure out what we're doing in public. But today we have a very special guest, Saint Uno from Atlanta, right?
Yes, that is correct.
Nice. So this is an interview, and actually my partner Dan couldn't make it last minute, so it's just me flying solo. So hopefully Dan and I have a good rapport where we crack a lot of jokes. But now that Dan's here, I'm gonna be so serious, man. I'm gonna be too serious
No,
with you.
I'll
I'm
try
gonna be
to
too.
I'll try to put on my comedian hat and help out as
Put
much
on
as
your
I can.
comedian hat.
Yeah.
Before we get started, we're going to plug all your stuff a lot. But I always plug one thing about the show is all the usual crap. Like and subscribe, leaving a rating and review, all the podcast stuff, all the YouTube stuff that you're supposed to do because everybody says it. Plus, there's always a link right at the top. We are affiliates of Reverb.com. Reverb.com is an online marketplace where you can shop for music gear. And it's pretty cool. You can shop from a local seller. You can shop from another individual. You can shop from the big box stores, all on one platform. And there's often a lot of cool stuff just to scroll through. So we get a small commission if you buy something there, and it's no additional cost to you. And the link will be in the show notes. All right. So enough of that crap. Let's talk with Saint Uno. So, dude. First of all, Dan was so sad that he couldn't make it, but he did send me a text. He was like, "Oh," he sent me a text like right before we started. He was like, "Oh fuck, I just forgot that I had something that I can't get out of."
Right.
But then he was like, "Dude, just tell him the album was fire."
I
And I
appreciate it,
was,
Dan. I'm glad to hear this.
yeah, and I agree. I agree. I was like, "Holy shit, this album is good." Hold on a second. I had a couple of favorites.
Okay.
So I loved Oh Wow
Okay, cool.
and Step Right,
Okay.
but I liked a lot of the songs. But for some reason, I guess I'm a up tempo. I like the groove on those. I like to dance. Plus, I like lyrics.
Right.
So I like when there's a lot of lyrics.
Okay, cool. Yeah. I try to incorporate all those things. It can get in hip hop, you can kind of get into this kind of like weird dichotomy of like I'm lyrical or I'm melodic or dancey. So I try to interplay both of those as well because that's something that I look for as well. Like I like to do both. So I'm glad that you picked up on that.
Yeah, I can hear it. I can hear it in the album. All right, so first thing we always like to ask is, what's your story? Your superhero origin story. So how'd you get into music? You could tell us about like we like to get to know. Actually, this podcast is sort of like you could tell. We're not. No, this is not scripted, and there's no production value. We're
Right.
just having a Zoom. We're just having a Zoom conversation.
Right. Raw
Right?
and organic.
Raw,
Yeah.
totally raw. So part of it is kind of like a networking thing. So I like to get to know you. The viewers like to get to know you as well. So if you want to tell your story, how you got into music, but if you want to tell how growing up, just like your life in general, we love it all. So and love to get to know an actual human being too.
Right.
So so lay it on me.
Yeah. I mean, and it's all pretty interconnected when it comes to music. And I also when I saw that I saw a couple episodes of the podcast before going on. And I like the way you guys phrase it as like a superhero story because that's kind of even how I like see it in my own mind, but I know not everybody sees it that way. They can kind of just be like, oh, music. But yeah, to get right into it. I didn't come from necessarily like a musical family per se or anything. So, but I always love rapping. I always love hip hop. So growing up, this is something I just did for fun, but I never really saw I never had any examples in that area to say this is something that you can actually pursue. So I never really did it. So I ended up going to college, majoring in film, which is what I still do today. So I still love filmmaking. That's kind of my first love, but I like to say that music is like my true love. So and going to school, I went to Bard College in upstate New York. It wasn't really what I expected in terms of my college career, but I guess like the gift in that is that it kind of led me to music, because a lot of the times where like me and my friends, we were just kind of bored, had nothing to do. There was a studio that they allowed the students to access. So like whenever we could get our hands on some studio time, we would do it. And so that's kind of how I actually started cutting records. Was just like in college. We had a couple friends. Some people made beats, and so some people rapped. So we would get in the studio and actually put out my first quote unquote mixtape my senior year. It was really for a Photoshop class I took. So our final assignment was like, make something that's just make whatever you want. And I was like, well, I'm gonna make a mixtape cover. So I pretty much made a mixtape cover, and I was like, well, I need the music to go along with the cover. So I ended up making that. And what ended up happening was I had just to show how like impactful people's words can be in your life and stuff like that. I just had like a friend of mine tell me like, hey, I know you just did this kind of just to have fun, but like this is actually pretty good. Like I would really listen to this in my own time. So it's like maybe this is something that you could pursue. And then simultaneously, right, I went through this kind of spiritual awakening type thing my senior year of college. It actually came through. So I'm in Atlanta, as you know. And I don't know how freely we can talk on this platform, but I assume it's pretty free.
Yeah, when we like to keep things kind of positive,
Right. Okay.
but you can
Um,
curse.
Okay, cool. Well, long story short, I got arrested my senior year in college when I was visiting home in Atlanta for
Oh,
just like simple marijuana possession, nothing crazy. But like I said, we're in Atlanta, so it's illegal. So I had the choice of I had to get a lawyer and everything, and they basically got it to a circumstance and situation where I could do a lot of community service. So I chose to do my community service at a library. So I'm at this library like hours on end of the day, just killing time. And, I'm kind of in this funk because I'm like, oh man, I don't want this to be on my record. I'm about to graduate college, a lot of anxiety and things like that. And I see a book and it's called A Wish Can Change Your Life. And it just jumped off the shelf at me. So I get this book. And I don't necessarily, I'm going to talk a lot about kind of like spirituality and things like that, because that's kind of, I'm a content creator as well. So that's what a lot of my stuff deals with.
I
But
love it, man. Love it.
okay, perfect. So like I don't necessarily prescribe to like one system of spirituality, but I can kind of gather and gain inspiration from all walks of life. So long story short, there's this book. It's called A Wish Can Change Your Life, and I grab it. It's kind of based on like the Kabbalah and Jewish mysticism and things like that. And they basically break down like a step-by-step method on how to manifest or achieve anything you want in life. So at the time, like I said, I never saw myself to be a rapper. I was like, I'm gonna do this film career or whatever. So I actually I pick up the book, I read it because I have all this time in the library, and I decided to make a wish. And that wish was I had been applying for internships my whole college career at Viacom in New York City to be an intern there, but I kept getting rejected, kept getting rejected. So I was like, you know what? Let's give the book a whirl. Let's see if we can make this happen. And then so my final semester of senior year, I actually end up getting the internship. So like I got what I wished for. So it was like this mind blowing thing where it's like, whoa, did I like manifest? Did I actually make something happen? So like after that happened, it kind of gave me the epiphany that like I was wishing for something that I thought was feasible, but it wasn't necessary. I was like, well, if I got access to this, I might as well do what I truly wanted to do. And like I said, I had my friend told me, oh, you're good at music and stuff like that. So something that just became a hobby, it really started to like awaken things within me that I never really felt like a deep connection for. So then at that point, I was like, well, to hell with manifesting internships. I want to, manifest a music career out of this. So I start like doing the same thing for then. And it's we're still on this journey. It wasn't like as quick. And that's even one of the things that they talked about in the book. It's like the smaller the kind of manifestation, the quicker it can happen. The bigger, more ambitious it is, it might take a little bit longer. So I always have that in mind. But yeah, that basically just kickstarted me to really start to believe in myself and understand that whatever I truly desired, I could make happen as long as I was willing to put in the work. And when I graduate, I go home to Atlanta, and I start working on music independently. I got a beat from somebody that I ended up going to high school with, and I cut like my first official single. Like I said, that the mixtape in college, that was kind of cool and stuff, but it wasn't like me taking it very seriously. I get home and I make my first single, and like it was crazy. It was like a spiritual experience because I made the song, and I literally like stayed up all night just playing it over and over and over and over again, to the point where I just like a tear formed in my eye. I was like, wow, this is like, it was like a rebirth in the sense that I had never, because music was something that I always looked up to people for and thought was cool, but I never saw myself being able to do that same thing. It was just kind of me idolizing other people. So to have that realization that, oh, you can actually make something that's pretty cool and that people will like too, it was an amazing thing. And I just kind of fell in love with that whole experience. And that was probably around like, I want to say like 2015. So, or like about 8, 9 years into that journey, and still
Mm-hmm.
going strong, still connecting with other individuals, realizing the power of networking, which is even why I'm on this podcast and things like that. I know music can't exist in a vacuum, so you got to put yourself out there, all that kind of stuff. And then that's what also led me to being a content creator as well, because just understanding the dynamics of the music market, like it's cool to make. I'm in my room right now. This is where I make all my music. It's great to be able to just make music in your room, but like it's like they say, if a tree falls in the forest and nobody hears it, doesn't make a sound, right? So I realized that the kind of algorithms in terms of YouTube and Instagram and all this kind of stuff really catered more towards people who are flooding content out daily. And I don't want to necessarily oversaturate people with always making songs every day or something like that. So I realized the more I can become a creator and speak about just my personal experience, like I said, spirituality, teaching, I'm big on astrology, all these kind of things, it's kind of, I can cast a wider net to get people interested in Saint Uno as the individual. And then while I have you on my channel, while you're already there, you might as well check out some music as well. So that's kind of how all that evolved. So that's pretty much my story in a nutshell. I tried to make it as short and sweet as possible.
That was awesome. Oh, you don't have to make things short and sweet on this
Okay.
channel. We like it when people just go off. So
Okay.
I love that. I love all of that actually, because I am really into, I mean, I think a lot of people have to have a spiritual awakening.
Hmm.
Um, I guess you're kind of lucky you had one when you did. When did you graduate?
I graduated in 2015.
Okay. So you're lucky you had one now, because I'll tell you, I had one last year and I'm like 45 years old. I think I'm 45. I might be 46, but I
Okay.
actually woke up this morning and I decided to tell people I'm 1 year old now.
Hey, I love it.
Judge me by a 1 year old right now,
Right.
because I've been living in the dark for 45 years.
I get it. It's a reawakening.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, I hear the spirituality in your music too, because obviously there's one song that literally is something like has spirituality in the title, right? Like the second track or
The
third
second
track.
one, yeah, spirituality is a trend.
Right, right. So it is a trend. Also, I've been getting into astrology as well
Okay.
because my wife is an astrologer.
What? Perfect.
So, there's been a lot of stuff about, I can't tell you the types of shit that I've been exposed to in the last year, where I just find myself going like, what the fuck is this universe made of? Like, what is like, she tells me shit, I'm like, what the fuck is happening right now?
Yeah, it's mind
Because
blowing.
because I've had my mind blown too many times in the past year, but I'm so grateful for it. And a
Right.
spiritual awakening is not easy, like you say. It doesn't come from easy shit, right?
No, not at
It
all.
never comes from easy shit, but that's beautiful. Like, and I think maybe, I don't know, like, I want to ask you a lot about like technical stuff about the album,
Hmm.
but before we move on to that, I'm thinking like, I listened to the album and it was like, I just felt like a connection to it. I was like, oh shit, actually this is good. And I wonder if it's not just, you had good lyrics, you have a good you have a good like rap style, and you have good production. All that's something, but now, maybe we just have to hold some space in our minds and in our hearts where it's like, oh, somebody's coming across with something more than that, you know? And maybe that's why it connects more, I don't
Yeah,
know.
100. No, no, 100. I'm actually, that's spot on. That lets me know that I'm that whatever I'm doing intending intentionally is resonating, because that's something that I talk about a lot too, even down to, so like you brought up that track spirituality is a trend. That's kind of taking a dig, because I know the music that I make isn't quote unquote, like when people like to categorize themselves as like a spiritual rapper, they kind of have to fit this box of like, okay, I'm going to talk about these things. I have to be socially conscious. I can only, I can't fit popular sounds. I have to be really serious and stuff like that. When it's like, to me, it's not like you said, it goes beyond the lyrics. It goes beyond the style. It really, it's about the space that the artist is in when they're creating that music. So let's say there's an artist who they have a lot of spiritual quote unquote jargon and buzzwords in their stuff, but they're doing it from a space of, oh, I want to be the biggest, coolest spiritual rapper, or I want to show everybody that they're dumb and I'm smart and stuff. Like whenever I make music, I literally don't think. It's literally like a pure just therapy almost of like just me. So even if the quote unquote lyrics that I'm saying aren't the most spiritual or, the most enlightening or something like that, just the fact that the space I was in when I created that, I know I'm aware of the fact that that's going to transfer to the listener, So it's not always about like the verbatim of what I said. It's like whenever you can create that joy and fulfillment personally, that's like baked into the final product. So people, if they have, what I'm saying, ears to listen, they'll be able to pick on that, and they may not even, like you said, may not even understand why it's resonating, but that's why. So I'm glad you picked up on that.
Yeah, so I agree with that because I think there's something about, I was talking to a friend of mine just the other day about the types of intelligence we have,
Mm-hmm.
right? And but we have something more. Human beings, actually, probably all organisms and maybe the whole universe and maybe even inanimate objects, we don't even know, but
Right.
has some kind of more intelligence. I'll call it intelligence, but I don't know. But it's like intuition or just energy or something
Mm-hmm.
that, it's something that I feel like a lot of people don't tap into, maybe, but this is part of my spiritual path is like, oh, that shit is way more important than I ever thought it was.
Right.
Being a very heady person my whole life,
Right.
So I think you're right. When you create something from that humanity, from the emotion, the lyrics, I want to talk about your lyrics, but it's like the lyrics, maybe it's actually the lyrics themselves, they matter, but there's something more to the feeling that was there that when you made those lyrics, that also comes across. It's like there's a depth to it, or there's an energy to it
Right.
that it's not just, the letters. It's not just the typing on the page. There's actually more. There's like a soul to it or something.
Right.
I don't even know how to say it, frankly, but
Yeah,
I
no,
think you know what I'm
I'm
getting
right
to.
there. You
All right, so now actually you're bringing something up for me that I kind of want to put you on the spot a little bit because there's something that like kind of impressed me also, but stuck out.
Mhm.
So rap, and I'm a huge hip hop fan. All 90s stuff,
Okay.
To me, like the 90s were the peak. Biggie, Wu-Tang. I'm also an East Coast guy, so
Okay.
but I like Tupac. I like Snoop. I like Dr. Dre. I love Slick Rick,
Okay.
right? But hip hop there's a culture to it and there's a harder edge to it often, right?
Right.
There's some pretty, like, you have a little bit of that, but you also have some pretty sensitive songs, right? And they're not, there's a lot of, how can I say it? I don't want to go this far because I just want to say this, that like I'm a huge hip hop fan. I really love hip hop and I love it all. Even the kind of nasty stuff,
Right.
it all comes from, it all comes from that humanity. So I love it. But I also I had a lot of respect for the fact that you had like at least two songs that were pretty friggin' sensitive
Hmm.
for a hip hop artist,
Right.
you know? And I was like, oh shit. So like, and I love that too, you know, because it's like we have two sides to us, you know. Sometimes we want to be lovers, and sometimes we want to be nasty. You know what I mean?
Right.
And it's like just like embrace all of it, you know, or something. I don't know.
Exactly.
So I wanted to call that out because I was like, oh, this is cool. I'm into it.
No, no, you're again spot on, right on the money. So you said your wife is an astrologer, so I took that as a green light to kind of dive into that realm. So a lot about me, I'm a Cancer
There's
sun and a
there's no
Cancer.
red lights. There's no red lights in this podcast, man. It's all
Okay.
green. It's all green lights.
Okay, cool. So just from a because that's a I have a multifaceted answer for that. So from a like, just from an astrological standpoint, I have a Cancer sun and a Cancer moon.
Yeah.
Cancer is really associated with like it's a water sign. The womb. It's kind of like one of the more feminine signs, if you
Hmm.
will.
Hmm.
So on a negative end, it can be people who are really quote unquote emotional or in their feelings a lot, but it can also be a very intuitive sign and a very healing sign and things like that. So I think that's something that comes across that always came across in my music, just me using it. Like I said, it's even a form of therapy for me. So a lot of people who don't have positive outlets for like emotional release, if you don't feel necessarily safe with people to share certain things, then the art and the music becomes that safe space for you. So I think that's important to acknowledge. But then on another end, kind of getting at what you're saying about like specifically like 90s hip hop, but even today now, there's always been this, I'll call it like a stigma that, hip hop artist has to be, hard, tough. And that's evolved over the years. We have artists like, Drake who become worldwide sensations just based off being, lover boys and things like that. But I also like that's actually something that I really did struggle with because another thing that comes along with that in hip hop is you get a lot of artists who are inauthentic and who buy into this narrative that okay, if I want to be a rapper, I have to be that tough guy. I have to be this, that, and the third. So it's like what starts off as an art form and something that people just want to do to express themselves. Now they feel like they have to fit a mold, right, in order for that to be received positively. And something that I always say is that like spirituality is correlated to your individuality. So if that's not, it's all just about me being myself, honestly, So that's what I kind of strive for. And that's something that I really did struggle with early on. I might have made music that sounded more like traditional or to, purported a lifestyle that necessarily wasn't authentic to me, but then that loses, people can always see past that. Like there's nothing wrong with that if that's your experience, right? But hip hop has kind of become like a monolith of okay, this is the music of the streets or the music of struggle and stuff like that. And while there's a place for that, I've always thought like, this is just something that like I shouldn't necessarily be banned from participating in this art form that resonates with me just because I may have lacked that certain experience, right? So that's kind of what always put up a fire under my ass, for lack of a better term, to actually like, make stuff that can still resonate with people, but it's still authentic and me not trying to be something I'm not, So it might take a little longer. It might be a little bit more difficult because like you said, it's not necessarily like traditionally what you think of in hip hop, but I'm up for the challenge.
Hmm. Yeah, it's definitely an evolution. And yeah, it was cool to hear.
Thank you. I appreciate
Okay.
that.
So I think I want to do one of my I just like to talk about who your favorite artists are
Okay.
because that's what I love to talk about. So let's talk about influences, like your big influences.
Okay. So I was born in 93. So I was kind of around for the whole 90s wave, but a lot of my
You are
favorite,
alive.
yeah, alive for it.
Right.
But a lot of my favorites will come from later on. And then also too, me being from Atlanta, I don't know if you know, but there's kind of like like growing up in Atlanta, like Atlanta has kind of become the epicenter of hip hop currently, but before that it was always New York. So growing up, we kind of always had like I'll say like an animosity, but it was really like a jealousy. Like we always wanted to be that. So I was always kind of more fond of local talent versus kind of the traditional greats, whether you talk about like, like Biggie, Nas, Jay-Z and stuff, which I love all those guys as well. But me growing up, my favorite artist was Outkast, specifically Andre
Hmm.
3000.
Hmm.
He was kind of, and he kind of falls more so in that line with traditional, lyrical, spiritual type artists and stuff. So that's kind of the music that I grew up on. Um, Lupe Fiasco as well. He's from Chicago, a very lyrical artist. So growing up, I was kind of more so into lyrical stuff, but that kind of like you were saying, how you like the good stuff and the nasty side as well. When I got into high school, I got my first car, right? So that kind of really revolutionized the way I started to appreciate music, because whereas before I was kind of listening to it just for like lyrics and things of that nature, now I had a car, I was going out, it was about like this whole like so Atlanta is kind of the birth of what they call like trap music and stuff like that. So artists with the heavy bass, it's not necessarily lyrical, but it's just like street, and it sounds really good in the car. So that's when I started getting into artists like, you got Gucci Mane. And then one of my favorite artists as well is Future. And these are all guys from Atlanta.
Hmm.
So I try to blend some of their, while I don't have the same lyrical I guess content as them, given that they have a street background and stuff like that, and I'm not necessarily from that. I still adopt that style and just kind of apply it to the music that I make. So that's kind of where I said like I'm getting that blend of like the actual content of the words may be resonant of what I listened to early in life, whether that be Outkast, Andre 3000, Lupe Fiasco, but the style and the kind of rhythm behind it will be more reminiscent of trap artists, like I said, Gucci, Future, Ti, a lot of that Atlanta stuff that just sounds good that you can party to. But if you really take a second listen to it, it's like, no, there's some lyrical content as well. So yeah.
Mm. Yeah, I never got. I mean, everyone listened to that Outkast album when it came out, the big one. So
uh
of course I did too.
right.
The one with Miss Jackson and wait, but oh, Bombs Over Baghdad was on the next album, I think.
I think that
Maybe
was
there was
all
two
on.
albums in a row that where they blew up.
Yeah, I think the album you're talking about is Stank on You. I think that had Bombs Over Baghdad
Stank on
and
You.
Miss Jackson on it. Yep. That
Yeah,
was
yeah, that
probably
was
one of the first albums I ever bought, if not the first.
wow.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
had it on a blue boom box I got for Christmas. So
I Yeah, so actually, and I'm not really familiar. I mean, I've heard of Lupe Fiasco. I've heard of Goop G Mane. I haven't heard of Future. Of course, I've heard of Ti,
okay.
but I do. So I do hear the influence certainly in the sound
Hmm.
because I think that there's a different. I think that well, actually, there's so much Southern rap that has that like half. I don't know what to call it, but it's basically like 16th notes on the hi-hat and then but it's a half uh it's like a halftime feel.
Yeah, yeah,
That's like so much southern rap is
yeah,
like, it's like that's a signature. It's like, different tempos, but the hi-hat has to be 16th note on the hi-hat. Actually, no matter what tempo it is, it feels like there's always 16th notes on the hi-hat.
right.
Yeah, that's cool. I wanted to talk to you just briefly about this because I actually had sort of a realization. I don't know if you have an opinion on this, but um, this is this has become controversial now. But I like to talk about it because I feel like it's something that just keeps coming up. Kanye, I had I think Kanye might be one of the best rappers of all time.
Right.
Do, have you like do you have you gotten into him at all?
Yeah, he's one of my favorite as well.
Oh my God, his lyrics are crazy.
Yeah.
And I didn't, I mean, I knew because, when he was popular and when he was actually doing more rapping. So in the early days, I listened to a lot of his music, but I didn't really get into it that much. I didn't really listen closely. But just in the past year or so, I've been listening, and now he's become such a controversial dude. But I feel like I can't take the credit away from him because he's such a good rapper. I don't know why I want to bring that
Yeah,
up. I
no,
just
no,
keep
you probably picked on he is controversial, so I kind of left him out. I'm not gonna lie to you. I was like, what is that? But 100%, he's a big influence as well. Just when we start to talk about artists, because really he's the one who kind of made it. Okay, so you know who 50 Cent is? 50 Cent from New York.
of
So
course.
there was like like what I was talking about earlier of like becoming a rap artist who doesn't necessarily have to always be emblematic of the street life and stuff like that. They had a battle essentially when in 2008 where they both dropped the album, and it was kind of like a real tide turning moment in hip hop because like up until that time, in order to be a big major artist, you had to be like a 50 Cent, a guy who was street tough, you know what I'm saying? And then you get like a Kanye who's like this kind of like suburban type dude. He's a producer, his music isn't necessarily talking about a certain lifestyle, but he still has a huge audience. So he people like to call him like a backpack rapper and stuff like that. He's kind of one of the major figures, like along with him and Drake, who kind of like made it okay or palatable for a hip hop artist to be super big and major, but not be like a street guy and stuff like that. So I'm forever grateful for that as well, because like that's like I said earlier, that's something that I struggle with. I feel like every hip hop artist struggles with. How can I be? Because it is an art form at the end of the day, right? So it's like there should be no limits or bans on who has access to this art form. We should all be able to make it. But when you do have individuals such as Kanye who can take it to a certain platform, and then they don't have to be the tough guy, they don't have to be this, that, and the third, that inspires other individuals to say, oh, okay, this is something I can do, even if I'm not necessarily the prototypical artist and stuff like
Mm.
that. So yeah, I'm glad you brought it up. I was gonna let you do it first.
We didn't plan that either.
Okay, no, we
We
didn't at
didn't
all.
plan it ahead of time. I just like to because I think that I think that just to put it very bluntly, I think he has some mental health challenges,
Right.
and I think that and not to discount the fact that he's also made some controversial decisions in
Mm-hmm.
his life, but and it's also a weird thing that we always have to sort of I don't think he's done anything so bad that I can't listen to his music. There are artists that have done such bad things that I feel like I almost can't. I love their music, but I can't almost can't listen to it anymore because it just feels weird to me. He's
Right.
not one of them.
Right. It's
Um,
more so what he said versus like what he's done.
yeah,
Yeah.
but I don't want to take it away from him because I think like some of his songs are just off the charts, and the lyrics are crazy good, and it's like I don't even know. I just keep having to bring them up here and there for some
No,
reason. I
I mean
feel
I
compelled.
appreciate that because it shows a certain level of, like you said, it gets tricky when you're talking about someone's personal decisions versus separating that from the art. Sometimes it is inseparable, right? But then at the same time too, I feel like it shows a certain level of just kind of emotional maturity to be like, okay, I don't have to necessarily, because you don't necessarily agree with anybody that you ever met. We're all going to have differing opinions and stuff like
Hmm.
that. So we should be able to kind of, I'm not necessarily look at the art in a vacuum, but also call a spade if something is of value. And I even remember like going to film school where it's like crazy. It's kind of like almost like this double standard. Like when I went to film school, I remember one time or a couple of times we had like I was in this class called Aesthetics of Film, and they were breaking down just kind of
Are you
all the
talking about this is film school at Bard?
yeah at Bard.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, so like there we were just breaking down all the kind of revolutionary landmark moments in aesthetics of filmmaking. And one of the major things that we watched or that we talked about was how like the Nazi Party really revolutionized how filmmaking was done from a propaganda standpoint, because that's the first time that like political political I guess presentations, they thought about the vision first, right? The whole like organization of the stage and the presenter. Before it was more so just about like the audience and like the, you know, the announcer would come and speak to the audience, where we were talking about how like the Nazis had to do so much propaganda to convince the world that what they were doing was right, even though obviously it wasn't. They had to come up with this super symmetrical, almost like beautiful presentation of what it is they stood for, so that their propaganda could be more effective. So it's one of these weird things where it's like, obviously we're not praising people for what they believed in, but that at the same time doesn't mean you can't extract like a sense of value from what they did and stuff like
Mm-hmm.
that, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So it's interesting. Like we give that grace in other areas, but some people don't in other areas. So it's just something to think about.
Yeah. So, I I could talk about this all day. I don't want to go down a total rabbit hole, but um, I'm a huge jazz fan. Oh, actually, I wanted to mention this to you.
Mm-hmm.
So there's two things that jumped out in your lyrics that stuck in my head. So first of all, you mentioned Bill Evans. Now, to
You picked up
me,
on that.
oh yeah, so Bill Evans is one of my favorite musicians of all time. He's if I had to
He's
have
my favorite jazz artist.
oh yeah, oh
Yeah.
no question.
Yeah.
He's there was nobody like Bill Evans. And he was a unique guy. I actually had a family friend who was like a scholar of Bill Evans. He wrote a book on Bill Evans. I always loved the way he played. I didn't realize how deep it went until I read this guy's book, and I was like, oh shit, this guy does things on a different level. You can
Yep.
hear it come across in the music.
Yep.
Actually, one day we should talk about like a method on how to rap. It'd be
Mm-hmm.
fun to make an analog. Like, how do you take this? Like, how do you take technique? Actually, you probably I don't want you to teach me now, but one day I want to talk about that. But that's so two things jumped out. So Bill Evans is by far one of my favorite musicians of all times. Definitely my favorite jazz musician. So that jump when you said you were listening to Bill Evans in the song, that was like, oh shit. Second of all, and this is kind of funny, but My Name is Earl is one of my favorite TV shows of all time.
Okay.
You mentioned My Name is Earl also in there
I
in one of the
mentioned
songs.
so that was actually there's a hip hop artist called Earl Sweatshirt.
Get out of here.
Yeah, that's who I was referencing, but I guess it
No
could
way.
sometimes I do double entendres unintentionally, and that just might have been one of them.
Are you aware? Are you aware that the show exists?
I've never heard of it.
I'll tell you what. The show is hilarious, and it only ran for a little while, but there's a spiritual element to it,
Mm.
and it's hell. I mean, it's like lightning in a bottle. They actually captured something really special in
Okay.
that show, and I was like, oh holy! And no one has ever seen it.
Oh damn! So now I gotta check it
It's one
out.
of those. It's one of those shows. Like it didn't run for very long, but it is really funny, and there's a beauty to it. And I won't go. There's a beauty to it because the whole point is that this dude Earl is following his like karmic path,
Mm.
but in a funny kind of way. So I think you'd actually like it a lot. And I was like, holy shit, someone else has seen this show. But then and it turns out you haven't.
No, but I mean, I said that jokingly, but again, like you said earlier, how your mind is always blown in terms
Yeah.
of this whole spiritual joke. Like, there's been times in lyrics where I've said something, and then it's like I didn't even understand the meaning of it until later, or a new meaning behind it was revealed later on. So,
Yeah.
I don't think anything is by chance in that sense. So
Yeah.
I'm glad that you picked up on that. But no, I was specifically because I think the line is like you like I say like you can have all of my sweatshirts like your name is Earl. So it kind of sounds like my name is Earl. But
Yeah.
I was referencing there's a hip hop artist called Earl Sweatshirt. So kind of like the inseparable nature of the Earl from the sweatshirt is what I was saying, like telling the girl in my song, you can have all my sweatshirts, like your name is Earl. But that's funny that happened though. And also with the whole Bill Evans thing, I think that also resonates with what we were talking about earlier in terms of the actual spiritual space that an individual is in, and that kind of being transferred through the music. Because it was the same thing from, I actually got privy to Bill Earl by, there was a beat. So, in hip hop, there's a lot of like sampling of 70s music, but also jazz and kind of just looping that. One of my favorite beats that I heard one time had a sample, and I was unaware of it, right? But I listened to jazz a lot, so just I'm on YouTube one day, and there's a YouTube playlist coming on, and I hear that loop from that beat that I heard, and I was like, oh, who is this? And then I find out it's Bill Evans, and then that kind of takes me on a rabbit hole to listen to all his stuff, and I just fall in love with it, and I'm like, so he just became my favorite artist. And then it was crazy too, because on one of the performances that I was listening to, there's actually an interview in it after that, after his performance, where the interviewer is asking him all these different questions. And one of the things he mentions in that interview, he's like, I can't really resonate with music unless there's some sort of like spiritual essence behind it or something of that nature. And then when I heard that, I was like that's what I'm talking about. It's like it wasn't even necessary, like beyond the notes. Of course, he's a great pianist, composer, all that type of stuff. But even beyond that, there was something that I was picking up on that he was aware of when he was making that music. It's like it's a very personal. It's a very like, and he was also another very sensitive person. So just to hear how much I related to him as an individual after hearing that interview just made me love the music and appreciate it even more, so it's deep.
100%. All right, man. So I have another question.
Okay.
And so we usually don't go past an hour because, you give people an hour and I think they're pretty satisfied. But
Okay.
where does the name Saint Uno come from?
Okay. So again, I'm graduating school, and I'm taking artists. So I played basketball my whole life, and my number was 11. So people call me Uno. That's the Spanish name for one. I'm not Spanish, but it's just what people. And then also there was it comes from a couple of different places. There was a popular cartoon that was out when I was a kid called Codename Kids Next Door, and the leader of the group, his name was Nigel Uno. So my government name is Nigel, right? And it's funny too because he was like a bald kid and stuff like that. So people would just call, since my name was Nigel and my number was 11, people just call me, oh, like Nigel Uno, right? So people had always called me Uno my whole life. But then once I got serious about making music, I was like, there's like another artist from Atlanta. His name is like Uno the Activist. And there's like a couple of different people in like the independent scene who already had the name Uno. So I was like, okay, I need to like at least put something in front of it or change it up a little bit so I don't get drowned out in the algorithm by people who already are in existence. So I had like a group chat with my friends, and I'm just sending them like, oh, what do you guys think about this name? Like this Uno, blah, blah, Uno, blah, 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 Uno. And they're all like, no, sounds dumb, sounds corny, don't like it, da, 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 da. And I'm like, all right, cool. I just give up on it. And then I go to sleep. And then the next day I wake up, and it was just kind of like, it just popped in my, it was like the first thing on my mind. It was like Saint Uno. And then I send it to my group chat of friends. I'm like, Saint Uno question mark, and then they all replied like, yo, that's the greatest name.
Nice.
I was like, all right, cool, that kind of solidifies it. So like I said, I've been Uno my whole life. The Saint, it might have come from a dream that I just forgot or something like that, but
Hmm.
it was really just an attempt to make myself stand out in the plethora of artists.
I'm into it because I like just Uno. So the one thing about hip hop is that there's this like braggadocio like culture. Is
Yeah,
braggadocio like even a word?
yeah,
Or is it braggadocious?
I
What's
think
the
it comes
actual
from
word?
braggadocio. I think the original is Italian yeah, but I think Americans say
Anyway,
braggadocious.
so I think that the putting the number one in your name sort of like, is like a nod to that, but then also putting the saint in front of it is also just like makes reference to your spiritual side. And there's something, there's something that is like transcendent or elevated about it because if you start calling yourself a saint, then you got to start acting like a saint, you know?
100%. You like. it's like we're there. Yeah, a lot of the stuff you're saying is like already.
Yep.
So yeah, and that's something that I had to realize. Is like it was like after the fact because like like I just told the story. I wasn't necessarily like, oh my god, I was just trying to think of a cool name to my friends, but I realized people like to talk about the power in the word. Watch what you say, and so that's something that I literally experienced firsthand, where it's like you have to be almost careful of the titles that you're giving to yourself because these things do end up creating your reality to a certain extent, and there's a lot of power in words and in titles. So yeah, that's something I don't think it's by chance that I kind of became this spiritual teacher type content creator person just based off me giving myself the name Saint Uno. So yeah, that's
Hmm.
something that I would tell everybody who maybe hasn't made their, for good and for bad, because like you said, whenever you go through any type of spiritual type, it comes with a lot. So it's like I like witnessed that firsthand, and I had to kind of sit back and realize like, oh, I might have like created a lot of these circumstances for myself just based off identifying with this title. So yeah, it's a scary thing, but they say with great power comes great responsibility. So I try to live up to that.
Yeah. So that is awesome. So check this out. First of all, I have something funny. So I have I'm in my bedroom and there's a window right here.
Mm-hmm.
And I knew the light was going to come pouring through in here in 1 second. Does it look like I have one gold front or one
It
silver?
does. It does.
Listen, something, this is the universe right now.
I didn't even notice that till you said
Speaking
it.
speaking to us right now.
That's crazy.
Is that
I thought you
hilarious?
were going to say I do have, but it's just a light effect.
I just slipped it in when you weren't watching. I got one diamond on my canine right there. One
Right.
gold. It's a silver front. All right, so check this out. We should wrap up.
Okay.
Awesome conversation. One thing is, I just want to make sure I give you a platform to say whatever you want to say, because I don't know if we covered everything. I went through my questions, but I sent you a bunch of questions. We didn't get even through. We got through like 3 or 4 of them, but the conversation just flows. So if there's something you want to talk about, in particular, you want to say, that's cool. Because if we miss something that you think is important, we can do that. But also, you have to plug your stuff. And before the show comes out, sometimes it takes me a week or two to like get the thing, loaded up. Not that I do anything special about it, but
Right.
um, plug yourself as much as you can, and let me know what I can do to help out, because I can keep shooting your socials out there and all that stuff.
Okay.
So you want to
Yeah.
just roll for a
Well,
sec?
first of all, I want to thank you for having me on the platform. I'm very appreciative of that. And also thank you for checking out the album. I know I got it to you late, but hopefully when somebody hears this interview, they'll hear how much you enjoyed it, and they'll go check it out for themselves. The album is
Mhm.
titled Musec. That's Musec. Kind of a play on words, changing up the word music that ends with SIC, kind of like sick to muse, like the muse that inspires people. So the whole purpose of the album is to leave you inspired, right? For the music to be a muse to you to go take that and do whatever that is in your life, whether that is make content, be an artist, a teacher, whatever. It's just about inspiring people. So check that out. That's on all platforms. And I also have a music video that I'm pretty excited to drop based off a song on the album this Tuesday. It's called Like, Comment, Subscribe. And the reason why I'm excited about this video in particular is because I really kind of blended, because I shoot all my own videos. I told you I went to film school, but usually they're just kind of like random shots of me dancing, looking cool and stuff like that. This video has like a very distinct narrative and it's almost like a film. And I directed and casted and edited the whole thing. So it's kind of like the perfect culmination of my two favorite art forms, being the music that I make, and then also that being displayed via a film. So, like I said, that's dropping on my YouTube this Tuesday, and you can follow me on all platforms: Saint SAINT Uno UNO ATL. That's on YouTube, Instagram, TikTok, everywhere. And yeah, just glad to have you along for the ride, because life is a journey, not a destination. So we're going to keep on going and keep on living the dream. And that's pretty much all I got.
All right, that's awesome. So yeah, I'm gonna put all your socials in the show notes so people can just click and make it easy. And I'll also do some, promotion for you before the show comes out. I will warn you ahead of time, just again, that sometimes it takes me a few days, sometimes it takes me a week or two. I got a full-time job and a family and all this stuff. So,
Understood.
but it will come out and I'll send it to you. And thank you for being on the show because you actually do us a favor when you come on the show because without you there would be no show. Right, and
Right.
you're the star. You're the star.
I
So
appreciate it.
yeah, so and you are awesome, and the album is awesome. I love the album.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it. I look forward to this coming out. I will share it with my audience as well, and I'm looking to grow and flourish together.
Yeah, same. Awesome, man. Thanks again.
Thank you.
Have a great day.
You as well.
Later.